All right, welcome back to Troubled. So part of the purpose of Troubled, we have that three-prong why we do what we do. And one of it was to investigate, expose, and reform current abusive programs. So today we have the first of our kind in this experience. We have Amanda Householder, who came to us over concerns for Circle of Hope, which is a program run by her own father, Boyd Clifton Householder. So Amanda, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Okay, so why did you reach out to us? Because this has kind of blown our mind, to be honest.
Well, actually, it started with that. I posted that video, and I didn't really know about your guys' podcast until I think on Twitter. And then I saw that and I was like, oh my goodness, podcast. And so, yeah, I just was like, well, they're doing these stories, so maybe they'll listen to mine. I've tried contacting people in the past about this. It's just not taken.
What kind of barriers have you faced in the past? Like, who were you contacting? Are we talking like state departments, media?
Well, yes, I did contact, I have contacted DSS on this situation. I think the first time was 2017. Okay. But after that, and they didn't go anywhere, I contacted Dr. Phil, and they said—
Of all people.
I know. He told me that, or not he, but his producer told me that they would not do the segment unless my parents would do the segment. And they asked my permission to get a hold of my parents. And I said, yeah. I was like, but honestly, they're not going to do the segment. And they didn't do the segment. And so Dr. Phil declined that. But then I got a hold of, I think it's KMOV in St. Louis. And they said they were going to do an investigative report. And so I sent them all the girls' information that I had at that time. And at that time, it was a lot more than I do now, because we were going through an investigation with the Highway Patrol of Missouri. And then they turned us down because they said they didn't have enough evidence to the abuse. So, and then Sarah Smith, I'm not sure why Sarah Smith didn't go through with the story, but she was also looking at Agape. And I kind of feel like that's where that ended up ending, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it derailed. Okay, so let's cue everyone into the mystery here. We're talking about Circle of Hope, which is a program that your father runs where?
Humansville, Missouri.
Humansville, and they've been open since when?
2006, June 2006.
Okay, so we're going on 15 years of this location. And the Agape, because obviously with our audience specifically, their keyword buzzers just like went off. You know, all antennas they care about what you have to say now. Because Agape is a big player in the why is nobody paying attention to the children calling child abuse. So how is Agape related to your father or Circle of Hope?
So in July 2001, my parents moved to Agape, and my dad became at this point, he was head of the animals, the ranch. And then eventually he became the dean of staff and students there. So oh, go ahead.
And you yourself you moved there with your parents? You moved to Agape?
Yeah, we lived at Agape from 2001 until June 2006.
How old are you when this is happening?
We moved, I was 11. And then I think we moved right before I turned 16. So from 11 to 16 or 15.
Those are really important years.
Yeah.
And so is this your family's first touch with this whole behavior modification world, or?
I would say the excessive exercising part of it, but not the, well, when we were getting there, Agape was ending spanking. So they were moving more towards just more military boot camp, like jumping jacks, push-ups, push-up position for hours and stuff like that. The home that they worked at in Florida, they didn't do those types of workouts. They just spanked and did sentences. And I'm not sure, because I was a staff child there, I don't know the extent of the abuse the kids went there, because I was locked up basically at the first home. But I do know they did spankings and sentencing, like sentences where you had to write something over and over and over again.
And this original home that you're talking about, this is prior to Agape, and where is this?
This one is in Tampa, Florida.
And this is called, what do they call this one?
Hope Children's Home.
Okay. So, and your family is also living on site at Hope, and what years are you there?
Well, we were there twice. The first year, the first time it was called Faith Children's Home, and we were there from 94 till, I want to say 96 or 97, because my parents left to go start their own home in West Virginia because they didn't agree with how the school was going. I was really young then, so I don't really remember that. But they went and moved to Virginia, and that didn't work out. My sister ended up passing away, and that same home changed its name from Faith Children's Home to Hope Children's Home. They came to the church we were at in Virginia, and they did like touring where they go sing and like preach and stuff like that. And Buddy Morrow told my dad, hey, you need to come back and work for us. And so we did. I think it was like, I want to say within the next month, me and my dad went back down, and that would have been 1998. And we didn't leave until 2001.
When you guys were heading to Agape?
Yeah.
So is it fair to say that you kind of grew up in these programs?
Yes. I honestly, most of my childhood was in these programs.
But kind of also an outsider within your own community, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Continue, please. No, this is a surreal concept. I think we have more access to survivor testimonies where even if people spend 5, 6, 7 years, their entire teenage years in these programs, it isn't their family life. You know, it's very rare to have someone who like grows up with their family being on the inside of these programs. So I'm definitely interested in anything you have to contribute.
Yeah. Basically within our family, my dad is very, I feel like he's not diagnosed because he doesn't believe in this, but I feel like he has severe PTSD. And with that, he cannot stand being embarrassed. And if he gets embarrassed.
So it sounds like the adults that you went to initially did believe you, but that going to the adults caused further trauma and more fear.
Yeah. The next year they ended up kicking me out of the school.
Of Agape?
No, this was at Circle of Hope, my parents' school.
Okay.
That was after telling the lady what happened at Circle of Hope. I just want to say he shuts down and he becomes super abusive. I remember we would go to church, and we were raised on children are to be seen and not heard. Every Sunday, my brother and I would come home and put on as many pairs of underwear as we could, because we knew that we were either too loud or made too much of a noise at church, because we were either heard. We were being heard. And he would take his belt off and he would just beat us for, at being a young child, it felt like forever, but it was so bad that when we were done, we could not sit down. My butt would be red hot for days after. It was bad. It got to the point when it got worse. So we started putting books in our underwear, and then he noticed that. And then he started making us take our underwear off and spanking us bare bottoms.
Wow.
When, I don't know why, but he switched from using a belt at one point to using a horse crop. And that he used that on my brother so bad that it broke. And so one day he took he took a golf club and took the metal part off of it and started beating my brother with the fiberglass stick. At this point, I confided in one of the girls at the home, Faith, and I told her what was going on behind closed doors. And she took it to one of the staff members there, and the staff member told my dad. And my dad had this really long conference table. He sat the staff member down at one end. He was at the other end. I was on his left-hand side, and my mom was on his right-hand side. And he made me tell the staff member that I was lying. And the moment that staff member left, my dad sorry, I'm laughing. It's not funny. It's just really weird. He pulled out the golf stick and started hitting the table, telling me this is not a golf club. This is the fiberglass stick of a golf club. And then he just started beating me with it. And I remember trying my hardest to crawl under the rug he had, yelling, help me, help me. And that was like the last time I went to someone at that place. I remember not too long after that, we moved to Agape. And at Agape, me and my siblings were really violent towards each other because of what went on at home. We just picked up on being violent. It was very toxic growing up. But we were fighting one day, and Agape had intercom phones in everyone's house. And we accidentally hit the intercom phone, and we were yelling at each other. And my mom was in the shower. And so my dad came home and hung up the phone and then started beating us and then telling us what was going on while he was like beating us. And I remember, I think it was like the next day I ran away. Agape, if you look on a map, it's literally out in the middle of nowhere. So I ran just onto their property up a hill, but it felt like I was really far away. And I was like, you know what? I have a friend. Her name is Ashley Clemenson. She was the granddaughter of the owners. I was like, I can go tell her parents what happened, or not her parents. I can go tell her what happened. And she can either hide me in her closet and I won't have to go home or something. Well, I go to her house and I ask her mom if we can play. And her mom's like, yeah, go play. And I told Ashley, and Ashley told her parents. And her parents took me into the owner of Agape's office. And the owner basically told me that I was wrong. And that if I was being punished, I was being punished for something I did, and I should be punished for it.
Well, punished or beaten?
Well, they said punished, but the thing is, they go by the spare the rod, spoil the child, and to them, they're not going to look further into how he's beating you, if that makes sense. They're just going to go by what he says because he is the good, godly Christian that they have to believe. I don't know, other than it's just weird because even when we went to the church that they're currently at is called Berean. I went to a lady, her name was Julie Burton, and I was staying with her, and I found out she worked with foster kids, and I confided in her what went on at the home. And she believed me. She like fully believed me. But for some reason, she's like, oh, well, let me talk to Brother Abels, which is the pastor of the church. And he went to my parents. And that night, I was beaten really bad for telling her everything. But I don't know what it is. They just don't believe the child because spare the rod, spoil the child. If we did something wrong, it's our fault.
Okay, so you informed the religious community around Circle of Hope in Missouri, and then so did you actually go to an adult at all three programs?
Yeah, actually, I went to the owners of Agape, and then I went to well, she wasn't an adult. I would say she was like 16 or 17 at.
Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't even sound like, excuse me, like a belief system, because if they are, supportive of corporal punishment, both in the schools and in their own homes, then he's not really doing anything wrong anyways.
Yes, exactly. Hope Children's Home. And she did what she thought was best, going to an adult. And that didn't help. So.
Okay. Well, I mean, honestly, when people say, why didn't you reach out for help? It sounds like you did. And did you stop reaching out for help after you were kicked out of Circle of Hope?
Oh, yeah. At that point, I was done. I didn't want to. The brainwashing they did, I didn't want to even open that can of worms. I was done. You can even see online where I go on and I start defending my parents because the guilt trips, my dad would call me telling me, oh, hey, they're going to get me this time. This time I'm going to jail. And so that would make me feel like I needed to go defend my dad because at the end of the day, he's still my dad. And no matter what, I still love him. Unfortunately, what he's doing is wrong, and I don't agree with what they're doing, but I still loved him, and he knows that, and he knew that at that time, so he knew he could play me that way. And so you can go see online where I'm like, no, they didn't do that. If anything, it's your fault because you're a horrible parent for not taking care of your kids. And I don't believe that anymore. 100%, I do not believe that. I don't think I really believed that then. I just was standing up for what, I don't know, at the time I felt I needed to stand up for.
Well, did you also, it sounds like if this, you fawning and supporting your father in the program, this is happening after you were kicked out. So it sounds like a lot of the motive for you to have his back is to keep a connection with your family.
Yeah. And then after that, we stopped talking for about 4 years.
So what changed it? Like, what changed you from pot? So some people are going to hear this and they're going to be like, I know Amanda, that bitch lit my ass on fire when I tried to tell the truth. And now she, which for the record, I just want to say for me, makes you more credible because you know what I mean? Because I can see you doing the opposite. So for you to come full circle, like I find these claims now to be more credible. I don't think you've always hated your dad. You've always been lying about your dad because obviously you were supportive of your father. But some people are going to be straight up tripping. So like, what happened, girl? Like, what is the difference between, you know, you guys have the wrong guy, leave my daddy alone, and okay, even though he's my dad and even though I love him and I can accept that, like, this needs to stop.
I had kids. I think my son, it was either he bit me or he hit me. It wasn't anything that, I don't feel that you should spank a kid. I now know, knowing what I know, I don't believe in corporal punishment. But at that time, I had just had him, and I think he was a year old. And he bit me, and just out of instinct, I hit him on the butt, but it left a mark, and it shouldn't have left a mark. But my husband, or he's my boyfriend, but he came in and he's like, you don't do this. And I felt so guilty. I felt like the worst mother ever, and started going to therapy. And it was just, I can't even describe how much of a snowball effect it was of like, oh my gosh, like things just started coming back to me. And I was just like, I was raised in a toxic environment and I should not be continuing this with my kids. And thankfully, that one time was the only time that we ever had an issue with that. And we have come to, I've learned how to become a better parent that way. Weird, but yeah, becoming a mom helped me.
That's not weird. That makes perfect sense. You know, like, as you growing up with this behavior happening to you from authority, and for you learning to accept it probably before you even thought about it, happening to your peers, you know, heavy levels of corporal punishment and verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse. That's the modeled behavior. But it also is a beautiful redemption story and it makes perfect sense that you having your own children and flipping the script and it not being me and my peers or trouble or cause trouble. And this is how we treat kids, but it being, this is my own, I'm a mother now. Who am I as a mother? What is my relationship with my child? I mean, thank you. Like, that's amazing, because not all of us change our minds and try to be better people, you know? So, I mean, I think any therapist would be like, oh, that makes sense, girl. The best motivation in the world is your child.
They truly are. I like to tell people they saved me. It's weird, but they did. You asked me about what other people are going to say. I have reached out to a lot of the Circle of Hope girls that I have gotten into arguments with before, and I've already apologized to them. And I have messages, but I've apologized to, I'd say, about 90% of them. If I haven't apologized to them, it's because I have not found them. But I truly do feel bad for everything. When we were there, or when I was there, I'm sure you guys know, but power trips. And because I was their daughter, I do know that I had power trips. Now, I wouldn't necessarily put people in push-up position, but I would take it to my dad. And at that point, obviously, I'm taking it to my dad's, and he can do the worst punishment ever. So, sorry, I don't know. But like I
no, it's a big thing. the what part of our experience is our responsibility. And we've talked about it. And, you know, even within the survivor community, there's people that have been the cause of harm to others. And we've all on some level been that, you know, ourselves. So I think that you taking responsibility and offering an apology to these girls for not standing up for them, for causing anything, and for not believing them. I think that you championing this cause now is the best apology that you can make.
I think so too. And yeah. Sorry, my mind's going, like, I have a million different things. I just don't know where to go from here.
Yeah, no, I feel you. So where we go from here is something that you mentioned to me that really, really concerned me. So, okay, it sounds like, so these are your biological parents though, yes? Boyd Householder's your father by blood. Okay, but you mentioned he has some other daughters that were not his blood and came through this program machine. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think Maggie was the first one. So I'll start with her. I want to say it was 2012 or 2013 that Maggie, her dad was on some medication to stop smoking. And the side effect of this medication was suicide. And he, unfortunately, committed suicide. And in doing so, my parents ended up adopting Maggie. And she essentially became my sister. My dates are a little messed up. I think it was either 2013 or 2014 because I had just had my first son. And she wasn't, I think she was 16 or 17. But they adopted her, and basically she stayed there. They made her stay until she was 21. But within doing so, they took, I want to say it was close to 30 grand from her because her dad left her some money from her trust fund. I don't know if he had that set up, but he left her some money somewhere. And instead of putting it towards her college, which it should have been put towards, they put it towards their stuff. She will know more exactly what they used to pay it for, but they took her money. And then at 21, they kicked her out. But instead of getting her a flight to Oklahoma, which is where she's from, they shipped her off to St. Louis, Missouri. Her biological mom, which didn't really have much contact with her throughout her time, had to come up with one of her friends and get Maggie and bring Maggie back to Oklahoma. The other girl, her name's Rachael Kellso. And sorry, she gets me all the time. She's a little older than me. I think she's older than me by 2 years. So that would put her at turning 31 or turning 32. She was medically diagnosed unfit to handle her, to take care of herself, mentally declared unfit to take care of herself in 2013. And so her parents gave over co-guardianship to my parents. And she literally will be there for the rest of her life if we don't help her. She is like the sweetest person ever too. She has like the best smile, but because she is not capable of controlling her emotions, she will see the worst side of my dad most of the time she is there, because my dad can't even handle her. Like I said earlier, my dad, when he gets embarrassed, he just gets so mad. Like you can just see his face and he goes red and he can't handle himself. And I've seen him pick her up and slam her to the ground. Oh God. And he had this rule where if he calls restraint, that all of the higher up shirts were supposed to come running. And every single girl higher up shirt was supposed to sit on her wrist, all of her pressure points, until she screamed. And if she wasn't screaming loud enough, he told us that it would happen to us next. one point, I don't remember what point it was, I was like, no, I can't do this. And I stayed downstairs because I was in charge of the kitchen, and I just made up lies like, oh, I have to take care of this. I have to do this. I have to do that, because it was really traumatizing. Like, having to do that to anyone was traumatizing, but to do it to Rachel, it was really traumatizing.
How long do you estimate that Rachel herself, a special needs human being who should be under special protections by the state, how long do you estimate she was in stress positions and restraints
Hours.
like this?
And I'm not even lying. She's been in, I would say 2 hours has probably been the longest, but she was in it for hours. Her sister Ariana was also at the school. And at one point, they both were getting restrained side by side, and they both were the same amount of time. Both of them.
How old were them at this time? I want to imagine, I want everyone to fucking imagine this, because Rachel, this super sweet, especially abled human being, and her sister side by side being held down, screaming in stress position, pressure points. How old were they?
Ariana would have been 14, and Rachel would have been 17 or 16, because she's just a couple of years older than me, and I was kicked out at 17. So I think she was 16 or 17.
Okay. And this is, how often are these tactics being used on the girls at Circle of Hope?
Every day.
This is an everyday occurrence.
You could get restrained for not smiling. You could get, we had another set of sisters, Candace and Ariel. We were told if they even looked at each other or looked in the direction of each other, we were to take them down with all our force and start pushing their pressure points until they screamed. And then someone would have to run and go get my dad. But just for looking at your sister, I mean, it's only natural to look at someone you know. So it is, literally for anything.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I had a pair of siblings. I had the sister, and another family had the brother, and there were multiple pairs of siblings at my school, and they were always on personal blackouts with each other. So think about the trauma that you're not only being kidnapped, sent to this program where you're being emotionally, verbally, and psychologically minimum, and sounds like definitely with this situation, physically abused at Circle of Hope, but you also, there is someone that there is someone that knows who you really are, and believes in you, and they're coexisting, but you have to pretend they don't exist. And if you don't, either you or this person that you care about will be brutalized in front of you.
And I don't know.
I don't understand either.
I know. I'm like, I try to, but it really, like, the only thing I can think of is control. And in 2006, the ending of 2006, myself, a girl named Mylan, and a girl named Chloe actually ran away. And the same girl, Candace, asked us if she could come with us, but we told her no, because they had alarms in the hallway, and her room was across the way from mine. And the two girls I ran away with we had an adjoining room. And so I wish I would have taken her then, but that didn't happen.
We wish we would have gone with everybody. I mean, everybody wishes they would have, looked around, been like, there are only this many of them, and there are this many of us. Two of us hold them down, everybody run for the door. I mean, the Dundee Ranch riot, if you need to live out your fantasy for that, read up on the Dundee Ranch riot. That's the Costa Rica WASP, Narvin Litchfield place, Costa Rica raids. But then after, WASP wouldn't let the kids go, even though Costa Rica took most of them and raided. They dragged them back from the jungles, the ones that had run off. And so they literally, after a few weeks, I think there was only a couple dozen left at the school at this time, rioted to get out and get to embassies to wait their turn to get back to the US. It was, so there is fantasy fodder for those who, need that, but most of us didn't. What happened when you ran away? Because you didn't stay run away, did you?
No, actually. So I'll just start from the beginning. And we started talking, and somehow, I forget exactly how, we got this idea. I was allowed to work at the salon in Stockton, and there was this guy who had came in, and he was flirting with me. His name was Matt. And so I had a phone, And I contacted him. I got his number through the salon, and I contacted him, and Chloe took the phone, and she's like telling him everything that's going on at the home. And he hangs up and he talks to his dad. And then he calls us back and he's like, well, I can take you as far as Kansas City. And we're like, okay. So that day we went and grabbed trash bags and then started packing everything we could. I had some jeans that I was going to turn into skirts because we weren't allowed to wear pants. But we're like, oh, well, let's take these. So we put on the pants. At night, we climbed out the window and we started walking down this long road until we saw Matt. And he picked us up, and we didn't really have a plan. All we knew was Chloe just kept saying, go west. That's where California is, go west. And so we just kept driving west, and we made it to New Mexico. And I, at that time, was scared because the girl that Chloe that we ran away with, she was dating a gang leader. And Mylin, she had her mom to go to, but they were talking about just living on the streets and stuff. And so that scared me, especially like growing up the way I did. I was always sheltered. And so I was like, I called my grandma and I told my grandma I would not tell her where I was at unless she promised me she wouldn't tell my grandpa, or not my grandpa, my dad. And so she handed the phone to my grandpa. And my grandpa asked me, he's like, where are you? And so I told him, I was like, Las Cruces, New Mexico. And so they got a hold of my parents. My grandma paid for a plane ticket for my dad and her, and they both came down and got me from there. I ended up staying in a halfway house overnight. But then once they got me, they took me back. And the moment my grandma left, my rights were all taken away. Not that I had many. I mean, I had more than the girls that were in the home, but everything was taken. Like I had nothing. I was put on the wall. I couldn't even use the bathroom when I needed to, which is something the girls have to deal with all the time. So I got severe UTI. I don't remember exactly why I got off the wall, but it was a couple of months later. They finally let me up and they put me back in charge of the kitchen. And I think it was because my mom needed to do like everything secretary wise, and they had no one doing the kitchen. So my mom was just overwhelmed. And so I think that's the only reason why they were like, oh, well, you need to go start working in the kitchen again.
Fuck, how many Kelsos are there?
Okay, so she was adopted out of the Philippines, and she had, I think, Peter.
These are adopted kids?
Yeah.
Have you noticed this? Have you noticed this?
Yes,
girl.
It's
what
so
the
sad.
fuck? It is. Like, don't adopt them if you're not gonna fucking be a parent.
And that's exactly how I feel. And it makes me sad because there was one girl, she was adopted out of the Ukraine. Her name is Laura. And when she turned 18 and her parents didn't want to pay for her anymore, they literally kicked her out. They gave her a stuffed animal and a skirt and told her to walk. And they are 6 miles outside of any town. Thankfully, there were people that picked her up in the town of Humansville and took her in. But that's not the only person they did that to. That's just one of the ones that I know of. It's just weird. And she was adopted out of the Ukraine. And then a lot of the other girls that are sent there were adopted out of different countries or just adopted out of foster care. And it's just a weird, it's just weird. I don't know.
Yeah. Because coincidence doesn't work, right? Because it feels like there's a causal element with people adopting kids and then kind of returning them into these recycling programs.
Yeah. And it's sad, to be honest. I don't want to like judge anyone's parenting, but it's really sad, especially when you know that you're adopting them out of a toxic situation, like Rachael, like the Kelsos. Their biological parents beat them severely. Like Joel, the boy I dated, he would have cigarettes put out on his head daily. He still had scars on the back of his head. Rachael was kicked across her room, or not the room, their house when she was an infant. Like they went through a lot of abuse, and her adopted parents knew that. so they should have known when, I think it was 6 kids total. There's so many, I can't, I know it was Peter, Joel, there was one more boy, I can't remember his name for some reason, Maya, Ariana, and Rachel. And Maya was sent to Refuge of Grace. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's now called Wings of Faith, but it's the girls' home to the Agape boarding school. And then they sent Rachel and Ariana to my parents. So they just...
Are you cool with all this being on the record?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so were the boys sent directly to Agape, or did they, because Circle of Hope is only for girls, is that correct?
Yeah, Circle of Hope is only for girls. Yeah, Peter was there before before my time, because we came in 2001. He left, and then it was Zachary and Joel were there when I was there at Agape, and they were one of the trouble boys there, so they were constantly getting punished, if that makes sense. Push-ups, jumping jacks, put on the wall, no talking. Yeah, and then, like I said, Maya went to Refuge, but Refuge didn't open up until, like, I think it was 2005, and they were a different home from Washington. And then they came and just merged with Agape randomly in 2005.
See, and that's what this, the householder family journey through the programs really illustrates, right? The connections.
Yeah.
How interwoven it is. Because, so if you met these kids when you guys moved to Agape, then did Rachel come to Circle of Hope with you guys when you left?
No, so Agape is just a boys' home. Rachel and Ariana, they weren't there.
They weren't at the girl program yet?
No, because we didn't open until 2006, and they came, I think, 2007 or 2008. I didn't even know of Rachel and Ariana until after they came. I knew of Maya, but that was because she was at Refuge. But I wasn't allowed to talk to the boys at the boarding school at Agape. It's so weird. They actually had this thing where if they saw a female coming, they had to part the Red Sea, because most of them wore burgundy shirts, and they would have to yell, "Girl, part the Red Sea," and they literally would have to move 2 feet away from you so you could walk by them. Like, you couldn't look at them, you couldn't talk to them, nothing like that. I actually got into trouble a lot at Agape because some of the staff girls at Agape would start rumors on me, and unfortunately my parents wouldn't do what they should have done and researched it. They just took the word for it, and I got into a lot of trouble over that. So that's just another way of looking how Agape is toxic.
Oh, yeah. I don't think anyone who's ever heard of Agape thinks that it's some lovely Christian boarding school that's like therapeutic for kids, aside from the people who are spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars on it for their kids. But okay, so Rachel's entire family just got thrown into the system. So it makes sense that her parents were willing to sign her over to your parents. Did your parents have anything to do with declaring her unfit?
From the sound of it, like I wasn't there, but from the sound of it, because I was talking to my mom at the time, it sounded like it was my parents' idea, because nothing against the Kelsos, but my parents already know that the Kelsos don't want their kids. And that's something they would constantly say, is that they don't want their kids. And so when that happened, my mom said it would give her extra money. Not Rachel. When I say her, I mean my mom and my dad, extra money. So to me, it sounded like it could have been a mutual thing, but it sounded like it was more of my mom trying to get Rachel for the money.
Yeah, well, if they've set up a trust for this person that's going to need specialized care for the rest of her life, then your mom's probably the beneficiary of that trust now.
Yeah. I think
one would imagine.
Yeah, I'm almost positive she is, because my dad doesn't have anything to do with the finances. Like, his name is on it, but my dad's not the smartest person mathematically or even book wise. So he leaves my mom up to do all of that stuff, anything office wise.
Right, which sounds like she has dips because they had an issue with the IRS, which I wish, the IRS is what shut down Synanon. So I wish they'd shut down your parents.
Well, the funny thing is, the IRS thing, back in 2016, I was talking to my grandma, and at this point, my grandma was still talking to my parents. My grandma told me that they were moving their funds. And I was like, what do you mean they're moving their funds? And she's like, oh, something with the IRS. And I was like, okay. So like, I know that something was going on, and I don't know how to search up what was going on, but they were moving their money. So.
Well, it seems like there's so many angles for the authorities, if you will, to look at them. I would imagine that Rachael would have some sort of caseworker that should check up on her and approve the conditions.
Yeah. That was one of the questions like I had. I don't know where I would go to find out all that stuff. But that's what I thought, like, because she is a normal human being. I don't mean it like that, but she's not a normal person. You would think that she would have a caseworker, like you said, that came out and checked up on her. Now, I do want to say this. A couple of weeks ago, I got a message on Facebook from a girl who went to Circle of Hope, and she was talking with a girl that had just recently left. And that girl said that Rachael spoke up to DSS about the dark room, which is the room they use to lock girls in. That was left, so I don't know where it's at or anything like that. I just know of it. And Rachael told DSS about the dark room. And after DSS left, Rachael got into a lot of trouble. I asked the girl to find out what kind of trouble she got into, but the girl would not go into detail. But even Rachael at this point is speaking out about it.
So then she may have access to someone in the system. Also, wasn't there a DSS worker or someone of that nature who was supposed to do annual reviews or inspections? What's that about?
Okay, so yeah, I don't know how that went down. The Jonathan Osborne contacted me, and he's the lawyer for DSS. And he said that what was happening was my parents are turning around and suing DSS because DSS didn't come out and appropriately check up on something. I don't know what it was that they were supposed to be checking up on. I do know what he was investigating, and that was sexual abuse. From my brother, my youngest brother. So I don't know if it wasn't like if a girl reported that my brother sexually abused them and DSS didn't come out then or what, but it was apparently 2 times that they didn't come out. And so my parents turned around and was like, well, we're suing DSS. And so DSS's lawyer was like, well, I have to investigate this. And so he contacted me through seeing everything I've written online. I left my email, and he contacted me asking me to prove that I was Amanda Householder. And I said, well, I don't know how I would prove that because my name is now Amanda O'Brien, but I am currently talking with the Highway Patrol in Missouri, and I've been to San Bernardino County's jail, and they have had my ID, and they can verify who I am. And so ever since then, we had just been working together. I was sending him all the screenshots. Gosh, this is so hard. All the screenshots I had from girls stating that my brother raped them or forced himself upon them. And I even have a message between a mother and myself and about it. And I sent all of that over to DSS. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, this is incredibly hard. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just want to throw this out there as another a way to look at it. So my parents in 2012 caught a girl raping my brother Julian. She was 18 and my brother Julian would have been he was underage. I think he was like 14 at this time. And they kicked her out and they didn't get him help, not giving him an excuse for anything, but they didn't get him help. They pushed it under the rug. And then finding out all of the stuff he's doing, they failed him as a person, because they could have gotten him help. And unfortunately they didn't. And he, from what it seems like, he continued the cycle.
Yeah. It's not, listen, there is, firstly, you of all people don't need a disclaimer. If you're willing to get public and be honest about things that you and certain people, your family have done, then it's no disclaimer needed. And as far as why people, again, like you said, it's a fucking cycle. Not only was he sexually abused, but he grew up literally in an abusive, toxic environment, where this kind of, you're not submitting to me, let me assert my authority in all sorts of psychological, physical, and emotional ways. It doesn't mean that the actions he did are okay. They're still abhorrent, right? But it makes sense why he did what he did. And like you said, this is bullshit, because he never needed to be on the other end of this power trip. He needed help. He deserved better. And yeah, I do hold your parents, Agape, Circle of Hope, and all of these influences partially responsible for his actions.
Me too. And I don't mean that to be like, oh, my brother didn't do it, because he is in charge of his actions. He is an adult now, and I spoke with him just recently, and he kept telling me, oh, it didn't happen. And I told him, I was like, I'm not taking these girls' truth away. It's not my place to take it away, because they went through what they went through. And it's the court's place to decide. For me, I will still support my brother. And when I say support, I mean, I will be there for him if he goes to jail. I'll still talk to him. I'll still be his sister. I will still love him, because I know that it's not all him. I do realize he is an adult and he is in charge of his actions now. But I do feel like if he had a different childhood, it would have been a different outcome.
100%.
I told him I do care about him and I still love him. But to me, love is not sitting back watching people do bad things. It is helping them get the help they need to end those bad things. And becoming a mom, that's honestly what becoming a mom taught me, is tough love is not the way they taught us. Tough love is standing by the people you love, even though they're doing wrong things, and telling them what you're doing is wrong.
Yes, and helping them get the help they need.
Yeah, definitely.
So I want to be very clear then about what you did witness. So did you witness your father sexually abusing other girls?
I did not witness him sexually abusing other girls, but I did at Agape witness him. There were a few bigger breasted girls there, and he would weirdly flirt with them. For me, I don't think it's right, but he did rub them the wrong way. I know there's a girl, her name is Candace. We spoke about her before. He would have her massage his head, and it would just be her in the office. So for me, she's a younger girl. You should not be an old man alone in an office with a younger girl touching you. So I don't know what happened. It's because I was downstairs, but I didn't, like I said, I didn't witness that. When I say witness that, I didn't witness him kissing or inappropriately sexually touching anyone.
Is it true that someone else did witness inappropriate sexual behavior with your father and a minor at the Tampa location?
Yes.
Okay. And see, and that's what we want to do though, is like, we want to let you speak for yourself for what you personally experienced and what you personally saw. And there's a bunch of other people hitting us up now that you're talking to us, ready to speak on their behalf too. So, I think we have enough horses' mouths to get firsthand testimony from. We don't even need to speculate on hearsay, right?
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad.
Yeah. I want to say though that I find it really empowering, and obviously you've done some fucking deep spiritual work to love your father, but also be able to judge his actions separately.
It's been a long trip. It really, there were times that I was like, I hate him. I can't stand him. I want him dead. But he's a human. We're all human. And unfortunately, not all of us have a head on our shoulders. A good one, at least.
Right. Well, like program participants like us, a lot of us have prolonged distancing from our families that sent us to these programs. But your situation is that your dad is the program monster.
Yeah.
And so if you can find a way at least to, at least on a spiritual way, forgive him, not necessarily condone or forgive his actions, but like forgive him as a human and as a soul. I think maybe the rest of us need to do a little bit more work. Do you have any words of wisdom for those of us who are ready to go down that path with our own parents?
Honestly, the only thing I have is I did a lot of research on different types of mental issues, like PTSD. My dad has, like I said, he has that. He was in Vietnam. He watched his friend get blown up in Beirut. He has a lot of trauma. He has even his childhood. Like, our family is deep rooted in the IFB religion. Like, his dad helped build Bob Jones University and stuff like that. So he has his own trauma. It was just learning about trauma and how other people deal with it that helped me. So therapy.
Yeah, totally. We all condone therapy. I'm so glad you have a therapist. So far, we've never interviewed someone who doesn't have a therapist. And yeah, I'm not ready to do that. So I have a call with Unbroken, the founder of Unbroken, Samantha Gerson, who is like a therapist and focuses on survivors of institutional abuse because she is one,
Yeah.
So hopefully she can hook it up, because I'm like, at this point, I'm like, you guys are on pause because I don't want to be responsible for re-traumatizing you accidentally.
Definitely. You have to, I don't want to say move on, but you have to realize that what happened to you, and you can't do anything to change it. But you can use your voice to help the people that are there still going through what you went through. And for me, that's my therapy. I mean, my therapy is therapy, but that's my therapy.
Yeah, because if you stayed silent, if you kept your voice on the message boards being like, hey, survivors of Circle of Hope, shut up, you just don't like my daddy. Yeah. Exactly. Rachael Kellso would spend the rest of her life with your dad.
I know.
The cost, you guys, like everybody who's listening who isn't us, which I'm sure at least one person, right? The fact of the matter is there is a human being named Rachael Kellso who was adopted by a family that was not prepared to parent her. She was abused by her family of origin. She was abandoned by her adoptive family and signed over legally to Amanda's family, the householders, who aren't really doing anybody any good, you guys, not even their own biological children. Nope. Right. And she's our age, and she is literally like, we're not going to die. Most of us aren't going to corona out in the near future. And in all seriousness, though, a lot of our survivor friends have children who are in high risk, and that put that shit in perspective. So I've got to stop making jokes, and I'm sorry. But look ahead, like our lives look long. And that means that Rachael, who was in stress and restraint positions for hours and screaming next to her sister, who is this sweet, childlike soul who just wants to live this innocent, loving life, is literally looking at growing old and dying in our nightmares. Like, we got out, and she never will.
She never will. And that's what scares me. Honestly, I've had so many dreams just about trying to get her out of the place, because I don't think anyone deserves it, but she really does not deserve to be there for the rest of her life. There's nothing that she has done. The stuff she does isn't even sinful, if that makes sense. What she does is just her natural self, and her natural self throws fits because she is wired that way. Her brain is not wired to function like ours, and they can't handle that.
No, nor should they be entrusted with that. These people's, the vulnerable in our community, like, they deserve the most protection and oversight and care that we can offer. And so like they failed your brother, they're failing her still. And so I genuinely commend you, though. I commend you for heading this, because it's incredibly important that Rachael get out of this place, and that all the other girls that are going to come in after her do. But honestly, her serving a life sentence, that is alone enough, you know?
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for saying her name. I have wanted to go tag her name everywhere just so people can know her name.
I feel like a "Where is Rachael Kellso" hashtag should be something that the survivor community should commit to until we know where she is and we know like how she is being treated, and that we as a community can agree that that is an ethical, humane standard, because I'm pretty sure most of us can agree right now from what we've heard from you that it is not.
Yeah, no, it's not. It is not.
So you've come to the survivor community before to try to like get this moving. And it sounds like, you know, like you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, nobody really wanted to have this conversation until you posted a video on Twitter. So what video? What are you talking about?
So there was an ex-student named Joseph Askins who idolized my dad. And my mom called him up and said, hey, Boyd is dying. You need to come see him before he dies. That is something they've always said. He is not dying. He is not. He's been dying since I left. And that's just their way of getting guilt, I feel. So he went out and he visited. And at first he's like, you're not dying. Like, you look healthy. And he's like, everything's fine. It was just kind of like Agape, where girls were doing workouts. And keep in mind, this kid went to Agape and he didn't see what was wrong really at Agape. I mean, he did, but he didn't really.
He drank the Kool-Aid? Yes. Did he drink the Kool-Aid? Yes. Okay. Yeah, we understand, you guys, you know?
So he drank the Kool-Aid, and so he went and visited my dad, and he's like, yeah, everything was fine. They were doing workouts. He's like, but then the next morning, my dad was going through write-ups where girls write up what girls did bad. And there was this one write-up where a girl was thirsty, and this is a new rule. It wasn't there when I was there. But for the Black girls, apparently they are supposed to keep a bottle of water by their bed at night so they can manage their hair so it doesn't look bad. I don't know. He said...
Wait, pause before... Wait, what are they going to do with the bottle of water?
They used it to, I guess, make their hair go down. I don't know. I really...
Like all throughout the night, there's like an alarm that goes off for the African-American girls. That's like, hey girls, it's time to lubricate your, like, is that what's happening? No. Or just like before bed and when they wake up?
Before bed and when they wake up. But,
okay. I was really excited.
Yeah, no. But he said that, this girl said, she was a new girl. She's like, I'm thirsty. Can I get water? And one of the girls that had the bottle, she's all like, here, it's fresh. You can have some of mine. And she was doing it kind of hush hush, but the higher up shirts saw it. And so they wrote her up. And so that next morning, my dad calls all the girls upstairs and he starts yelling at this girl. And he's like, you're thirsty? Well, I'll make it to where you're never thirsty again. And starts making her drink a lot of water. At this point, Joseph was like, that's going to cause water toxicity. And so he started paying attention more. And he said he started talking to his wife, and his wife's like, this is wrong. Like, this shouldn't happen. And he happened to get...
I'm sorry, his wife was there? She came on the visit?
Through text. I'm sorry. He started texting his wife and telling her what was going on. And she's like, this is wrong. Like, that can kill her. And so he happened to get a video that night of my dad calling the girls over, and her name's Ashlyn D. I don't know her real last name or anything, but he calls her Ashlyn D. And she was put on the wall for something. And my dad's like, if you clench your fist, I want you to knock, he doesn't say it, he yells it. He's like, I want you to knock her out. And he just starts yelling, knock her out. That's a threat. If she clenches her fist, knock her out. And that goes for all of you girls. And at that point, I think they have 26 girls. And he's telling 26 girls, if this one girl clenches her fist, to knock her out. So he got that on video. And the next day, my dad, he has a gun range at the end of the property. He took Joseph he took Joseph shooting. And Joseph said my dad had to go up to the dorm. And so he started cleaning up his guns and putting things away. And he looks up, and my dad is holding this girl by her neck. she's off the ground, and he just slaps her across the face. And Joseph said that at that point he had to leave because he had never in his life felt like picking up a gun and shooting someone so bad. And I was like, no, I totally understand, because my dad has done that to me before. Like, my dad has picked me up and thrown me into a toilet, calling me a bitch, but by my neck. So these are the same tactics that were used on me. So it took me back. Joseph said he contacted DSS that night. He left, and DSS was out on that Friday, and he left on Thursday night. So,
when was this?
March 8th, beginning of this month.
Okay, so is there currently an open investigation?
Yes, it's open for 30 days.
Okay, and I think that Ashlyn's mother and father need to know what's going on with her.
I just don't know how to get a hold of them. Otherwise, I would have sent them that video.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering if there's a way. And so for any of, especially, I swear to God, the people in Denmark, if there's any of you in Denmark who are listening who can find Ashlyn's parents so we can send them the video. And see, that's the thing. If we had oversight and they had to report, like in Alabama, sheriff, I forget his name, ex-sheriff, whatever, who saved all the freaking kids, both from Bethel.
I just saw that. My husband's like, can you get a hold of him? Can you get a hold of him? I was like, I don't know.
He's amazing. Yeah. So we all have people in common with him. So, and I know people who went to Agape who are in contact with him because they've been working with him on other legislation. So that's definitely a next step, because that would, but yeah, Alabama, now, if you are housing a child for more than 24 hours, you're required to report that information to the state and adhere to a certain amount of, and protocols, like people come in, look around, know who's there, can talk to the kids openly, just the bare freaking minimum. And if we had that, then in situations like this, where you have a video potentially suggesting that someone's daughter is being violated in some way, that they would have access to that. Because I promise you, her parents were not notified about these going on.
They weren't. They will never notify a parent about what goes on. Most of the parents, most of the girls that shared that video, their parents were like, what the fuck? You never told me what was going on. And they're like, well, we didn't think you would believe us, because my parents, and I know a lot of people are, but they're so good at manipulating. They were even good at manipulating me into the, like,
well, they had your whole life. Okay.
That is,
you should never be concerned about a cult getting you. The fact that you believed or fell into or drank your parents' Kool-Aid, I mean, that was being fed to you from birth. So you're fine. Like, and if anything, you've had your inoculations, I would say.
I just can understand how manipulated someone can be from it, especially if you're trying to get your child help and you truly care and you try to get your child help. I remember her name is Kelsey Maddoxton. Her mom got her out, and her mom called DSS. And when her mom called DSS, I was told to take the girls downstairs and not to even come upstairs or even open that door. And if I heard them coming downstairs, I was to take the girls outside. So, like you said, if they were allowed to come in and openly speak to the girls, I think that most of those girls would say something, but they don't. They hide the girls.
We'll leave it open, right? Because like when you look at Utah, they make a shit ton of money off these programs that are not religiously exempted, like your dad, and pay taxes into the system. And then also the income on those programs really makes Utah look great as a state. I think it makes over 40% of their income. So I'm sure there's relations like that. And then also with a lot of programs, they hire locally, and in these small rural areas where there aren't many job opportunities. And so they support the community in various ways. And so one would imagine, because when we looked up Circle of Hope, we saw that they were, Circle of Hope, supported financially and in other ways through a lot of the local Baptist churches. And our buddy, they look like they're related, at least on the internet, but we're going to have to dig deeper and see what that is, to Hephzibah House, which everybody should be familiar with at this point. So, I'm sure those like ties are pretty strong. I mean, you've got freaking blood ties.
Yeah.
They've got to have ties that run deep. So at this point, how can the public help you to save Rachael Kellso, hashtag whereisrachaelkellso, and also to like draw awareness to what's going on with Circle of Hope and maybe get someone to go in there and look at this a little deeper? They're in their 30 days, right? So how can we help?
Just by spreading the word. That's honestly the only thing I can think of. My hands are tied. I feel like I'm at this point of just having to yell to get my voice out there. And that's all I can think of. I really don't know.
Well, you know what? You are peddling quite the story. And I think it's about time people look into it at the very fucking least. This just seems so typical of the industry, the way that your dad's connected and, you know, the kind of programs that he went through before he created his own. And if for nothing else, the Rachael Kellso situation is enough. But also, you know, anybody, please Google, like, they can look into Agape, they can look into Faith and Hope Children's Homes in Tampa. There are multiple cases against them. Tampa, like, it was like people have tried to go to the courts over and over with them, probably why there was rebranding.
Yeah.
Right. And then with your dad's school, there's all these stories of, you know, international students who ran away, which we're going to speak with one of them. Thank you for connecting us so she can corroborate all of this. And even parents, like you said, one of those girls, her mom came and rescued her when she realized how did she even realize what was going on with her daughter?
The relationship between my parents and her were kind of toxic from the beginning. My dad found out she had money. And so my dad's like, we need to get her in. And so he's all like, you need to pay us 3 months up front. And I think he charged her $5,000 a month. And so from the beginning, she just felt like something wasn't right. And then I think she was only there for 3 months. But within that time, Kelsey wasn't doing schoolwork. She wasn't really allowed to talk to Kelsey. Somehow, I want to say through a letter, Kelsey got out, because my parents read everything. And if they don't like what you write, they will take a Sharpie and black out what you write and make you rewrite it until it's perfect. But I think she somehow got a code out to her mom, and her mom just was like, no, we're pulling you. You're done. And came and got her. And then that's when she started looking into it. Like, my parents at that time weren't registered with the school board of Missouri. I think all of that information is on HEAL.
Well, and that's why they need access to the girls. So does Missouri currently, like, what are your parents are registered religiously? Yes. So what strings does the state have currently on Circle of Hope?
I don't think so. I really don't, because every time I've gone to DSS, or like I said, even Travis Hitchcock is his name, Sergeant Travis Hitchcock, it went nowhere. He took it out because he knew that the Humansville DA was probably in cahoots with my parents. So he even went to Springfield. And Springfield, the lady's like, this isn't my jurisdiction, so I can't do anything about it. But
okay, so why is Humansville not going to do anything about it? Are they making money off the school?
I don't have any paper trail of that. I don't know, honestly. I do know that my brother worked for the police station in El Dorado, Missouri, and now some of his ex-cop buddies, because he's not a cop anymore, they are, but they're sheriffs in Humansville. I also know that Agape's son-in-law is a deputy in Stockton. So they have police ties. I'm guessing because they have police ties, they have the DA's hand or the DA in their pockets. I don't know if they're paying. I have no proof of that, but it wouldn't surprise me. State-wise.
Yeah. Everyone knows Angela Smith. HEAL has it. There's a couple websites that have it, but she's got the documents up there so you can see those. Yeah, that was really surprising. But did they get current with that? That's not something we can even.
I don't know if they got current. I can't find if they did or not. I know I just spoke with the FBI last week on it, and she asked me the same thing. And I was like, I honestly can't say if they are or not. I know that they're registered with the Accelerated Christian Education Program, but I don't know about.
Okay. Well, you know what? Okay. So with your contact with the FBI, with the state, with everybody who is active now with the multiple cases and the multiple whatever investigations, why don't you talk to them and figure out how they want you to funnel information, because just like you going and talking to the few people that you were already talking to, like our inboxes have flooded, right? So if you either they want to get it directly from you, or they create like a hotline or email for the Circle of Hope testimonies and evidence. But I think that there's actually a lot of people that are ready to talk about your dad. I think you've started a tidal wave of truth. And so if anything, girl, I assure you, this is what you'll be remembered for in this community and in like the concept of justice, retroactively or not
justice
at all.
Is definitely what I need. Not I need, but we need, because Rachel, honestly.
Yeah, it's enough. I mean, honestly, somebody like argue with us. And speaking of arguing with us on social medias, that's where you have the video. So let's get that video viral. You might want to pop a "where the hell is Rachael Kellso" or "where's Rachael Kellso" hashtag or something on that. I'm definitely going to get a shirt. But tell us your social medias and where you are so that people can see the story, see the video and share that. And then when you get access to how you want people to chime in, because I'm really hoping that survivor community will get behind this and get like some instant style justice. I know we don't get that often, but could this be one of those times?
Honestly, that video, when I saw it, I was just like, this is what we needed. The video is on Twitter. My Twitter is @Batmanda4ever. But then my Instagram and my Facebook are just Berlin Von Mortis.
Berlin Von Mortis. Got it. Yes, that video. Send me just the audio and I'll pop it on the back of this so people can listen. And if they want to see, they need to pop on yours to see the video. But in the back at the end, like I missed it the first time, but the second or third time that I was listening, I heard all those tiny little she voices saying, "Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir." Like, "Do you hear me? Knock her out." And I was just like, oh my God.
Did you hear, like right before the video cut out, this part is what gave me the chills, because if you answer him with this, like, sometimes when I'm in trouble, I laugh. I can't, I don't know. I just laugh. I can't do anything but laugh. And so he would always be like, "Are you being a smartass or are you being a bitch to me?" And like at the end of the video, he starts to say, "Are you being," to her. I don't know what he goes to say, but I was like, that right there sounds to me like he is going towards her and asking her, like, you know, like, I don't want to say threatening, but like squaring up with her, like he would do with me so many times. And I was like, I didn't even have to see that video to know how that video was going to go down.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's when your dad gets his ass off that couch, you know, and then your buddy was like, "Oh shit, I need to stop recording." Yeah, well, because he was like, it seemed, you know, I'm not going to give away what you can see in the video, so go check it out. She already told you where. But yeah, I completely 100% agree with you. I would have turned off the video if it was on my fucking phone, which this was too at that point, because if he'd turned around and seen like, I'm not dying. You know what I mean?
My
what
dad,
would he have done?
And he would have, honestly, I no doubt in my mind, he would have taken the phone from him, because my dad feels like he is the most powerful person. When I came back at 18, I came back for a night to visit because my grandpa had just died and me and my grandma were going through some times, like we had issues. I came back and I had a phone and I was talking to my boyfriend at the time, and my dad found out that I was talking to my boyfriend, and this was like less than a 24-hour period. He took my phone from me. I was 18. He took my phone from me. Thankfully, my boyfriend at that time came and got me, and I left the next day, so I wasn't there long. But he thinks he can just rule anything, no matter your age. So I honestly think he would have taken the phone from him.
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised that our survivor president Trump doesn't run his own program. Okay. Like maybe he even does. I don't know. But like, they're pretty typical.
He reminds me so much of my dad. I'm just gonna say that. He reminds me so much of my dad.
He should, sweetheart. They're a product of the same kind of consistent trauma. You know what I mean? With that kind of ego and personality. You know, so, you know, if anybody wanted a really hard meditation on, you know, sympathy for another human, Trump is a NIFA survivor.
Oh, wait,
so
he went
luck
to
with that.
School too? Holy crap.
Yeah, he went to the New York, military academy.
Damn.
Yeah. actually, there's like an interview. It's still on the internet. Where he talks about, I think it's called like the men who made Trump the whatever he is today kind of a thing. He's telling stories about how the generals would just like knock your ass out, and like they beat respect and discipline into them, and how like the older guys would blah 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 and he would blah blah blah. And there are plenty of guys that went to school with him who have testimonials. So if someone wants to jump on Reddit,
I definitely will look that up because that's insane. Like I didn't know that, but it makes a lot of sense now.
Doesn't it? You know, you talk about learning about trauma and looking at people as humans and products of, you know, those cycles and patterns and fucking brain damage. Trump is like a beautiful example of that egomaniacal, like, you know, bully survivor.
Never grew out of it either. So.
Well, on that note, is there anything else that you want to say? We've decided this is going to be ongoing. We're going to have other episodes with the other people, and then we're going to keep caught up with you. But, you know, keep tuned because the Timeout Room is definitely going to have Amanda super soon. I'm going to connect you when we get off the phone. And she's been following. She's super excited about talking with you as well. And that's what we have to be concerned with, because look how they can affect our everyday life, y'all.
We covered a lot of the stuff I wanted to cover.
I know
I think that's it for right now. My mind is blank, basically.
Feeling okay?
I feel relieved. I feel therapeutic, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and we hope that this episode, our first expose, and the first in the series on exposing and hopefully bringing some reformative justice to the survivors of Circle of Hope, and especially liberating our sister Rachael Kellso, who is serving a life sentence in this abusive home. So what you're going to hear next is 25 seconds of audio from the previously alluded to video that Amanda is hosting on the social medias. Please keep listening. There's 25 seconds of this audio. Check out the video for yourself. But this is Boyd Householder speaking to the girls of Circle of Hope. And we really, really think that Ashlyn D's mother needs to know what's going on with her daughter. So if you can help us find out who Ashlyn D is and who her parents are so that we can send this video to her, that'd be much appreciated. And stay tuned for how you can support this ongoing mission.
Knock her out.
Yes, sir.
I mean it. Knock her out.
Yes, sir.
And that goes for any of the rest of you. If she clenches her fist like she's going to hit you, that's a threat. Knock her out.
Yes, sir.
You got that, Ashlyn?
Yes, sir.
And are you being